It was a Tuesday afternoon in October 1972 on the corner of Wilshire Boulevard and La Cienega in Los Angeles. The lunch crowd was streaming past, businessmen in suits, secretaries on break, tourists consulting maps. Most of them walked right by the skinny kid with the beat-up guitar without a second glance. But some stopped, because the voice coming from that 12-year-old boy didn't match his ragged clothes or his too thin frame. It was pure, sweet, and impossibly mature, and he was singing That's Amore like he understood every word. The kid's name was Miguel Reyes, though most people just called him Mickey. He'd been singing on this corner for 3 months now, ever since running away from his third foster home in 2 years. The guitar he played had been salvaged from a dumpster behind a music store, missing 2 strings and held together with duct tape. His clothes were donated cast-offs from a church charity box. His shoes had holes in the soles. But when he sang, none of that mattered. Miguel had learned English from the radio. His mother, who died when he was 8, had cleaned houses in Beverly Hills, and she'd always had music playing while she worked. Her favorite singer was Dean Martin. She'd play his records over and over while she scrubbed floors and polished silver in mansions she could never afford to live in. "Mijo," she'd tell him in Spanish, "this man, he sings like an angel, but more important, he sings like he's your friend, like he's sitting with you, telling you everything will be okay." After his mother died, Miguel had bounced between foster homes and group facilities, but he'd held on to those Dean Martin songs like a lifeline. When things got bad, when foster parents yelled or other kids picked on him for his accent, he'd close his eyes and hear Dean Martin singing Memories Are Made of This, and for a few minutes he'd be back in his mother's arms, safe. Now, at 12, living on the streets and singing for enough money to buy food, those songs were all he had left of her. On this particular Tuesday, Miguel had been singing for about an hour. He'd made $3.47 in spare change, enough for a burger and maybe some fries if he was lucky. The lunch crowd was thinning out. Soon he'd need to find somewhere to sleep before the cops came through on their evening patrol. He was in the middle of Everybody Loves Somebody when he noticed the crowd around him had grown larger than usual. 15, maybe 20 people had stopped to listen. That was good. More people meant more money. He kept singing, putting everything he had into the performance. Everybody loves somebody sometime. His voice carried down the street, clear and strong despite his age and circumstances. He'd learned to project from singing in the shower at various foster homes, the only place he'd ever had privacy. Everybody falls in love somehow. That's when it happened. The crowd, which had been dropping coins into his open guitar case and swaying along to the music, suddenly went completely silent. Not just quiet, dead silent. People stopped moving. Conversations cut off mid-sentence. Someone gasped. Miguel's first thought was that he'd done something wrong. Maybe he'd messed up the lyrics, or maybe the cops were here to chase him off. He'd been careful to stay on public property, but that didn't always matter. He stopped singing mid-verse and looked around nervously at the crowd. Their faces were strange, shocked, excited, confused, but they weren't looking at him anymore. They were all looking at something behind him. Miguel turned around. Standing there, about 10 feet away, next to a black Cadillac Eldorado that was illegally parked at the curb, was Dean Martin. The Dean Martin, the real one. Not a poster, not a recording, but the actual man whose voice Miguel had been imitating, whose songs had gotten him through the worst moments of his life. Dean was wearing sunglasses, a casual but expensive-looking jacket, and that famous slight smile that made you feel like he was letting you in on a private joke. He looked exactly like he did on television, maybe a little older, but still impossibly cool, still radiating that effortless charm. Miguel's voice disappeared. His hands went numb. The guitar nearly slipped from his grip. Dean Martin took off his sunglasses and walked forward slowly, carefully, like he was approaching a frightened animal, which in a way he was. Miguel looked ready to bolt. "Hey there, kid," Dean said.
his voice as smooth and warm in person as it was on every record Miguel had ever heard. "Don't stop on my account. You were doing great." Miguel couldn't speak. His mouth opened, but no words came out. His brain had completely short-circuited. This wasn't possible. This couldn't be happening.
Dean glanced at the crowd, then back at Miguel. "You know, I was driving by and I heard someone singing my song. And I thought to myself, that's either a really good recording or someone's got some serious pipes. So I had to stop and see." He smiled. "Turns out you've got some serious pipes, kid." Someone in the crowd laughed, a nervous, excited laugh. People were starting to whisper to each other. Someone ran off, probably to tell other people that Dean Martin was standing on Wilshire Boulevard talking to a street kid. Miguel finally found his voice, though it came out as barely more than a whisper. You're really Dean Martin." "Last time I checked," Dean said with a gentle smile. "And you are?" Miguel Reyes, but people call me Mickey." "Mickey," Dean repeated, nodding. "Good name, strong name." He looked down at the open guitar case with its pitiful collection of coins and a few dollar bills. "So, Mickey, you do this full time, the street performance thing?" Miguel nodded, not trusting his voice. "You got family, parents, someone looking out for you?" Miguel shook his head. "My mom died 4 years ago. I've been around." Dean's expression changed. The smile stayed, but his eyes became more serious, more focused. He'd been in show business long enough to read between the lines. This kid wasn't performing on the street for fun or practice. He was performing to survive. "Tell you what, Mickey," Dean said, making a decision. "Have you eaten lunch yet?" Miguel shook his head again. "Me neither, and I hate eating alone. How about you pack up that guitar and we go get some food? There's a restaurant a few blocks from here, Chasen's. They make a chili that'll change your life." Miguel stared at him. "You want to buy me lunch?" "Unless you're buying," Dean said with that trademark smirk. "But between you and me, I've got the better cash flow at the moment." Someone in the crowd laughed. Others started applauding. A few people called out encouragement. "Go with him, kid. Are you kidding? That's Dean Martin." But Miguel hesitated. 4 years of foster care and 3 months on the streets had taught him to be suspicious of adults who were too nice, who offered too much. Nothing came for free. There was always a price. Dean seemed to read his mind. He knelt down so he was at eye level with Miguel, which was something adults almost never did. "Look, Mickey, I get it. You don't know me. I'm just some guy who says he likes your singing. But here's the thing. I actually do like your singing. A lot. And I've been doing this long enough to know talent when I hear it." I paused. "I'm not trying to be your manager or make you sign anything or any of that Hollywood nonsense. I just want to buy a kid who's had a rough time some lunch and maybe have a conversation. That's it. After that, you're free to go wherever you want." He stood up and pulled out his wallet. He took out a $100 bill and placed it in Miguel's guitar case. "That's yours whether you come to lunch or not. Payment for the show. Best version of Everybody Loves Somebody I've heard in years, and I should know. I've sung it about 10,000 times." The crowd gasped at the $100 bill. Miguel stared at it. It was more money than he'd made in the entire 3 months of singing on the street combined. Dean turned to walk back to his car. "Offer stands, Mickey. I'll be at Chasen's for the next hour or so if you change your mind. It's on Beverly Boulevard near Dehaney. Anyone can tell you how to get there." Miguel watched him start to walk away. The crowd was breaking up now, people returning to their days, though many were still staring at Dean Martin's retreating figure. In a few seconds, this moment would be over. Dean Martin would drive away, and Miguel would be alone again with his broken guitar and his memories.
"Wait!" Miguel called out. Dean turned around. "I'll come," Miguel said, "to lunch, if the offer's still good." Dean's smile widened into a genuine grin. "It's still good. Come on, kid, let's go eat." 30 minutes later, Miguel found himself sitting in a leather booth at Chasen's Restaurant, one of the most famous restaurants in Los Angeles, the place where Elizabeth Taylor ordered chili to be flown to her film sets, where Frank Sinatra held court, where every Hollywood legend eventually ended up. And he was there with Dean Martin. The staff, to their credit, didn't bat an eye at Miguel's appearance. If Dean Martin wanted to bring a street kid to lunch, that was Dean Martin's business. They brought water in crystal glasses, menus and leather folders, and treated Miguel with the same courtesy they'd give any guest. "Order whatever you want," Dean said. "I recommend the chili, but the steaks are good too." Miguel ordered carefully, a cheeseburger and fries, nothing too expensive, nothing that would make him seem greedy. Dean ordered the famous chili and then asked Miguel questions, not prying questions, not the kind social workers asked when they were filling out forms, just casual, interested questions about his life, his mother, his music. Miguel found himself talking, really talking, in a way he hadn't in years. He told Dean about his mother, about learning English from Dean's songs, about how singing made him feel connected to her even though she was gone. He told him about the foster homes, though he left out the worst parts. And he told him about the streets, about singing to survive, about how sometimes music was the only thing that made sense. Dean listened, really listened. He didn't interrupt, didn't offer advice, didn't try to fix everything. He just listened and occasionally asked questions that showed he was paying attention. When the food came, Dean made sure Miguel ate slowly, not like someone who was starving, even though they both knew he probably was. Finally, over dessert, ice cream for Miguel, coffee for Dean, Dean spoke. "So here's the thing, Mickey. You've got real talent. I'm not blowing smoke here. I've been in this business 40 years, and I know the difference between someone who's good and someone who's got something special. You've got something special." Miguel looked down at his ice cream, not sure what to say. But talent alone isn't enough. You need training, you need education, you need to be somewhere safe where you can develop that gift. He pulled out a business card and wrote something on the back. "This is my manager's number. His name is Mort Viner. You call him, tell him Dean sent you, and he'll help you get placed somewhere good. Not just some foster home, but somewhere with people who'll support your music, help you get lessons." "I can't afford," Miguel started. "I can," Dean interrupted gently. "Look, kid, I make more money than I know what to do with. I can help with the lessons, the guitar, a real guitar, not one from a dumpster. I'm not saying I'm adopting you or anything. I've got 8 kids of my own, and I'm not great at being a dad to them," he smiled sadly. "But I can help make sure you land somewhere good, somewhere where you can actually be a kid and still sing." Miguel felt tears burning in his eyes. Why? Why would you do that? Dean was quiet for a moment. "You know, when I was young, I was a pretty tough kid. Dropped out of school, did some things I'm not proud of, and there were people along the way who helped me when they didn't have to, people who saw something in me when I couldn't see it in myself." He looked at Miguel. "Maybe it's my turn to be that person for someone else. Besides," he smiled, "you sing my songs better than half the professionals I know. Can't let that talent go to waste."
Over the next few weeks, Dean Martin kept his word. His manager, Mort Viner, helped place Miguel with a family in Pasadena, a music teacher and his wife who had fostered several children and actually wanted to help. Dean paid for guitar lessons with one of the best teachers in LA. He sent Miguel a new guitar, a real one, beautiful and perfectly maintained. But more than that, Dean checked in. Not every day, not even every week, but every few months, Miguel would get a phone call or a postcard. "How's the music coming? Mort tells me you're doing great in school. Keep singing, kid." Miguel never became famous. He didn't become a recording star or a Vegas headliner, but he graduated high school, then went to college on a music scholarship. He became a music teacher at an East LA high school, teaching the same kind of kids he'd been, poor, immigrant, overlooked, and he taught them Dean Martin songs. In 1995, when Dean Martin died on Christmas Day, Miguel, now Miguel Reyes, respected music teacher,
husband, father of 3, attended the memorial service. He wasn't invited, wasn't on any official list, but he went anyway, standing in the back with other people whose lives Dean had touched in ways the world never knew about. At one point, the organizers asked if anyone wanted to say something. Miguel surprised himself by raising his hand. He walked to the front, borrowed a guitar, and sang "Everybody Loves Somebody." His voice was older now, rougher, but still clear, still carrying the influence of the man who'd taught him, through his recordings and his kindness, what it meant to really sing. When he finished, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. Afterwards, Dean's daughter Diana found him. "That was beautiful," she said. "How did you know my father?" Miguel smiled. "I sang his song on a street corner once, and he stopped to listen." The story of Dean Martin and Miguel Reyes isn't famous. You won't find it in biographies or documentaries. There are no photographs, no recordings, no evidence except for Miguel's memories and a few people who were on that Wilshire Boulevard corner in October 1972. But it's real, and it reminds us that sometimes the greatest performances happen off stage, in moments of kindness between one person who has everything and another who has nothing except a voice and a dream. Dean Martin didn't save Miguel's life that day. Miguel was already saving himself, one song at a time. But Dean gave him something equally important. He gave him a chance, he gave him hope, and he gave him proof that someone believed in him. And sometimes that's all a kid needs to change the direction of his entire life. The guitar Dean gave Miguel is now in the music room at East LA High School. There's a small plaque on the case, "Given by Dean Martin to Miguel Reyes, 1972. Talent is the spark, kindness is the fuel." Miguel, now retired, sometimes goes back to that corner on Wilshire and La Cienega. He doesn't sing anymore. His voice isn't what it used to be, but he stands there for a few minutes, remembering the day a black Cadillac pulled up and the man whose songs he'd been singing his entire life stepped out and changed everything. If this story touched your heart, hit that subscribe button and give us a thumbs up. Share this with someone who needs to be reminded that one act of kindness can change everything. Have you ever had someone believe in you when nobody else did? Tell us about it in the comments, and don't forget to hit that notification bell for more stories about the quiet heroes who change lives one person at a time.